Alberto Fujimori and Augusto Pinochet were both very harsh leaders in hindsight. They are still considered keystone figures in modern Latin American history. I'll begin with Fujimori, who was the president of Peru for about 10 years between 1990 and 2000. Fujimori is of Japanese descent. He was born in Peru to a middle-class family. Eventually, he rose through the ranks and excelled academically. He even briefly studied at the University of Wisconsin. After his stint in the U.S., he returned to Peru and held various high-ranking academic positions. In 1990, around the time Pinochet withdrew from presidential office, Fujimori saw a chance to make a name for himself in Peruvian politics. The incumbent president, Alan Garcia, was becoming less popular due to the Maoist insurgency and the declining economy. Peruvians wanted change, and Fujimori was going to give it to them. Only 2 years into his presidency, Fujimori was having a hard time enacting the changes that he promised. Congress was not compromising. He led a self-coup in which the Peruvian military forcibly was used. Congress and the judiciary were dissolved. Public opinion polls indicate that citizens were actually in support of this. He implemented very effective neoliberal reforms to the economy. Fujimori faced a lot of scrutiny from other American states because of his unilateral decision-making. Many countries cut off relations with Peru because of his drastic reforms. Chile even requested that Peru be removed from the Organization of American States. The most promising changes Fujimori made were in the private sector. He also defeated the guerrilla warfighters of the Shining Path, a communist group, and MIRTA, a terrorist organization. On the international level, these groups were considered dangerous and leftist. He kept the country moving forward. Although not as harsh as Pinochet, he was a very corrupt man. His autocratic ways might have been favorable to some, but they were not necessarily the most legal means of ruling a country. The government was not a junta, but his economic reforms took many of the labor rights of citizens away. Companies didn't even have to pay Social Security. In 2000, news broke out about Fujimori bribing public officials. The head of Peru's intelligence service had made a video that undermined the entire Fujimori administration. He sanctioned the use of death squads, which was a violation of human rights. Fujimori even ordered thousands of women to be sterilized. After all of these criminal allegations were made, he eventually went through 3 separate trials. After the Peruvian government denied his request for resignation, he fled to Japan to seek refuge. International organizations attempted to charge him for his crimes against humanity. In 2009, he was sentenced to 25 years in jail, the maximum under Peruvian law. Augusto Pinochet is of Spanish and French descent. He entered the military academy at age 16. Not much is known about his earlier life, but his career in the military put him in perfect position to eventually lead a coup against the socialist Allende. His rise to power was done almost entirely through the military. After almost 40 years of service, he reached the high-ranking position of general in the Chilean army. He received praise from Salvador Allende and took the position of commander-in-chief nearly 18 days before his coup. In 1973, Allende's new government was growing too powerful. Pinochet was in the perfect position to overthrow his regime. The military took complete control of Chile through establishing a junta. It was a true coup d'etat. Secretly, the United States was involved in many elections in Chile. Nixon feared that Chile would become another communist state that polarized the international world. He wanted to affirm U.S. presence in Latin America. The U.S., over the course of many years, had made an investment in Chile, and they were not going to see it go away. Pinochet brought neoliberal reforms to Chile as far as the economy goes. His economic advisors were colloquially known as the Chicago Boys because of their free market stances on capitalism. Workers' wages decreased and dramatic spending was cut. This made the economy more effective in production, but the people were not happy. International organizations in the late 90s tried to prosecute Pinochet. The world was becoming really progressive. Many Chileans still support his actions. It's a black and white world of politics. Fujimori and Pinochet's regimes still bear a very striking resemblance to each other. Pinochet was mainly prosecuted for his abuses of human rights. He ordered death squads and allowed for labor exploitation in his country. He arrested and tortured thousands of people. Some of these individuals weren't even committing any acts of treason in the national government. Pinochet also framed many revolutionaries in order to justify his actions. Most people would agree that Pinochet was a dictator. Under Spain, he was prosecuted and never found guilty. He was placed on house arrest in 1998. Fujimori was sentenced to 25 years. Pinochet did not receive any jail time. Fujimori and Pinochet are both of Latin American descent. Initially, people thought their presidencies were going to be prosperous. They abused their powers. Through self-interest and fairly conservative ideals, they both made changes to their respective countries. They were also both influenced by Chicago neoliberalism. They both ruled with an iron fist. Eventually, both of them would be tried for their crimes against humanity. They both seized power in the form of a coup. Fujimori most likely borrowed ideas from Pinochet. They were both highly corrupt and sought to mask many illegalities in their administrations. Fujimori is thought of more like a professor. Pinochet was influenced by his career in the military. They can both be regarded as nationalists, but their people faced oppression. Fujimori is thought of to be more moderate, although his crusader actions might indicate that he's not even willing to compromise.